It turns out that you find the exact same themes are coming to them. You have reuniting with souls of departed loved ones. You have them resolving some of the big issues in their life. If there were things that they had done in their life where they had a lot of guilt or shame and they had hurt others, they end up able to make amends and to do that in real time with the spiritual ingredients of these encounters. So the dying experience from the hospice world is identical to what happens in near death experiences and shared death experiences. Shared death are just like near death, but they happen to perfectly healthy people. Often people who might be loved ones, say 1,000 miles away from a mother who is dying. But when the mother dies and leaves, and her soul leaves her body, it goes through and grabs the soul of the loved one who might be 1,000 miles away, takes that along, even to the point of witnessing a full blown life review with the mother's soul. But then the bystander soul comes back to this world. And those shared death experiences have many of the same ingredients of near death. And yet, as I said, they usually happen in people who are perfectly healthy. So they completely defy those materialist pseudo explanations of decreased oxygen tension or increased carbon dioxide if somebody's body is dying. But no, you don't need those ingredients for these incredible spiritual journeys. And anybody who wants to learn more about shared death experiences should read Raymond Moody's book, Glimpses of Eternity. I think it came out in 2011, but that's all about shared death completely. And then also follow the work of William Peters. If you Google Shared Crossing Project, he's in Santa Barbara, California, which enables people to learn techniques that might enhance their ability to share the dying experience with a loved one who is terminal. And William Peters was just a guest with us, and he's claiming some very good success with this. He's recently written a book. It's called At Heaven's Door. I highly recommend it. And that will help people get up to speed with shared death experiences, which are an extraordinary kind of extension of near death into explaining our spiritual nature and the spiritual nature of the universe at large. Highly recommend people get into learning more about shared death experiences.
That's very interesting. That sounds a bit like I think it's the Gateway Experience program at the Monroe Institute, where they are learning how to escort other people who are passing or have passed to the sort of next part of their
Exactly. In
experience.
fact, that was my original introduction to binaural beat brainwave entrainment, was working at the Monroe Institute. So I'm very familiar with that. I took that Lifelines course where we were actually there to help souls who were stuck, who had died and yet weren't certain they died and what have you, but the many different ways that souls can get stuck. And we were there helping them. That's, in fact, the environment where I met Karen Newell, because she also was there training, learning how to teach people to use these sounds to get into deep hypnotic or deep states of conscious awareness. And in fact, I was the one who, once I listened to what she and her business partner, Kevin Cossey, he was the sound engineer, they were putting together their own binaural beats. They'd not shared them with anyone else. Once I heard those back in early 2012, I said, you guys really need to get these out to the world. Now, I'm one of their biggest customers and biggest fans. I listen to Sacred Acoustics an hour or two a day, and I've been doing that for more than 11 years now. But people can go to sacredacoustics.com to learn a lot more. I highly recommend it as a meditative tool. And just cut to the chase from a neuroscientific perspective, the reason I think Sacred Acoustics is so powerful is because it uses binaural beat brainwave entrainment to engage a circuit way down in the lower brainstem. And this ancient circuit, by oscillating left and right, back and forth quickly with these binaural beat sound waves, I believe that is what allows our conscious awareness to be set free from the illusion of here, now, and sense of self. So I highly recommend it. People can learn a lot more at sacredacoustics.com to learn about these meditative tools and the different ways that you can use them. Her site is very good for instructing people about the details of these various programs and how they've been used. And it's important to note that Dr. Anna Yusim, Y-U-S-I-M, wrote a peer-reviewed scientific study of Sacred Acoustics binaural beat brainwave entrainment that was published in the Journal of Nervous and Mental Diseases I think it was in February of 2020. And basically they found that in her busy Manhattan psychiatric practice, that simply listening to binaural beats, Sacred Acoustics, gave a 26% reduction in anxiety symptoms over 2 weeks. And that's compared to only a 7% reduction in anxiety symptoms in people who had standard psychotalk therapy, but did not have the tones. So by listening to Sacred Acoustics tones, you had a dramatic improvement in alleviation of anxiety symptoms. This is very early in the pandemic. So Karen knew that it was important to get these tones out to the world to relieve anxiety, especially as the economic collapse added on top of the pandemic. And so she made the Whole Mind Bundle, which was the source material for that scientific paper showing such a reduction in anxiety. She made that Whole Mind Bundle available for a discounted price of $19. But she also included a free option because she knew there'd be a lot of people because of the pandemic who didn't have the financial wherewithal, but would need something like this powerful tool. And I believe that free option is still available. Due to Karen and Sacred Acoustics' generosity, people can download and use that very same set of acoustic files that were so effective in alleviating anxiety in that scientific study.
So there was something that you mentioned was Ender's Net. It sounded like you said Ender's Net. Did I get that right?
Indra's Net.
Oh, Ender's Net. Okay.
INDRA. It's from some ancient Eastern teachings, the notion of this interconnected web. And that was just the vision that came to me after coming out of coma and trying to describe and go through the various elements of my journey. That extraordinary vision of the net that I had in the core realm showed my interconnection with all that was happening and showed that my actions and thoughts and learning and teaching were also associated with the transformation of consciousness itself, which I believe is the reason the whole universe exists, is for this one mind to grow. We're sharing the dream of the one mind in this process of learning and teaching and unpacking what is possible for sentient beings to accomplish in recognizing their connection with the universe at large. And that's really what I see a lot of this as being, this kind of expanded sense of mission, of understanding that we're all in this together, this process of discovery. And it's really all about the deeper version of know that inscription over the temple of Apollo at Delphi in Greece, know thyself. And I think that's ultimately what we're all being challenged with. And the interesting thing is you find that your mind is not just related to this 3.5-pound gelatinous mass sitting in a warm, dark bath between your ears, but your mind is sharing the mind of the universe. And this becomes obvious, especially in our book, Living in a Mindful Universe. We point out all the different consilience lines of evidence that lead to this notion of primacy of mind, from the hard problem of consciousness in neuroscience, through the binding problem, the apparent unity of consciousness, which is very difficult to explain in the individual if you're postulating that it's all different neuronal populations contributing in network fashion to this bigger version. Why is consciousness so unified? It's because it's unified from the get-go. We're sharing that one mind. The brain is a filter that allows it in. And then you have, in this argument of consilience, all the evidence for non-local consciousness, like telepathy. Read Guillaume Playfair's book on twin telepathy. You realize 35% of identical twins have very powerful telepathic experiences. Of course, they're easy to demonstrate in twins, but they also occur in many other connections we have with people where telepathy is real, remote viewing is real, distance healing. And then you run into all this kind of category of non-local consciousness in the form of near-death, shared-death experiences, deathbed dreams and visions, like in the hospice work. And then, of course, after-death communications would probably happen in more than 50% of our modern Western population. In fact, it's the population at large that's going to be driving this revolution. The scientific community is catching up, slowly but surely, but ultimately, it's people having these experiences. Once they realize they don't violate science and scientific principles, but in fact are supported by the modern science of quantum-informed scientific investigation of consciousness. And really, that's where this whole thing explodes. And for example, if anyone still thinks that this is talk of the afterlife and reincarnation is not scientific, I would send you to bigelowinstitute.org, because that's where you'll find 28 essays that were written in the year 2021. The challenge was from Robert Bigelow, an aerospace engineer in Las Vegas, who said he'd lost his wife, his son had committed suicide. He wanted to know more about, are they really still here in some form? And So he put a question out to the scientific community: what's the best scientific evidence for continuation of consciousness after permanent bodily death? And you had to demonstrate at least 5 years research experience in the afterlife question to submit an essay. But in that context, they got 204 essays. They were going to give out 3 monetary prizes. Instead, they gave out 28. And you can read all 28 of those winning essays at bigelowinstitute.org. And from my perspective, you read even that first place essay by Jeffrey Mishlove, and you realize we're far beyond questioning whether or not these things are real. We're now into, okay, how do we work this into our larger worldview of understanding? But the old heyday of materialist pseudo skeptics saying this is nonsense, science disagrees with this, are gone, because quantum physics actually demands this kind of free will openness of sentience that we share, and doesn't allow for that complete determinism that I thought before my coma based on my materialist scientific studies. And once people start reading these essays, and if you're looking especially for the deep and profound scientific essays in that bigelowinstitute.org group, I would steer you to Bernardo Kastrup, and I would steer you to Pim van Lommel, who won second place, and I would steer you to Julie Beischel. Now, many of the other essays are excellent, but these 3 in particular are the strongest kind of scientific footing, I think, for defining this afterlife question.
Well, I was going to ask the question, at what point do you think that the NDE experience or other spiritually transformative experience are going to inform the current view of reality that science has? But it almost sounds like that's really already been answered. Perhaps it's more that mainstream disseminators of information like media, etc., really haven't caught up yet. I think that's probably more what the issue is.